Hello, my name is MadZ Brovo, and this is my series, one chapter at a time. Venom. The glass door slid open as bare feet hit the cold concrete floor of the balcony. Lynn leaned on the railing as she lit her cigarette. She stood, listening to the noise of the city she was so accustomed to. It amused her how the city didn't change much over the years, just buildings spread up and down and a change in the residency, but the overall atmosphere remained the same. Lynn stood looking over the city longer than she probably should have before putting out her cigarette and heading inside. As she opened the door, she sees a lit candle on her nightstand, illuminating Genesis and the burns that stretched from his neck down to his stomach. He looked up at her as the door shut. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked quietly as she approached him. She laughed dryly. "I could ask you the same." She glanced at him as she opened a small cupboard, pulling out a bottle of rosé and 2 glasses. He let a small smile drift onto his lips. "Nothing changes, it seems." She sat him a glance as she poured the wine. "We both know that's not true." Lynn recalled the time she took Genesis home in the summer of '08. She had a different face and name, Grace, who unfortunately died in 2014. It was a fatal car accident. That's what Lynn had told them. Not that she was Grace, who was also most of her own bloodline. She heard the screams of 6-year-old Genesis, who laid with chemical burns in a dark alley. She ran him home to help. It wasn't till he had a night terror on his first night that she even knew he held the ability to create fire, until he scorched his bed. He stayed in Lynn's bed for about 2 years after that, getting burn ointment applied every night for the first 2 weeks. Genesis was often whispered about throughout the corridors of the large penthouse that held Lynn and all of her gang members. Venom, they called themselves, seemed to not hold Genesis in the highest regard. They often spoke about how he was Lynn's pity case, or her son, rather than a part of the group of vigilantes, and they had a fair reason for thinking so. Lynn hadn't had a child, let alone a friend, since 1607, when she murdered her abused daughter and the devil she called a husband. Lynn was shaken out of her thoughts as Genesis put his glass down. "Can I stay here tonight?" he whispered, pulling the covers over his head. Lynn almost refused, but the way he spoke reminded her of that little boy whose bed almost burned when he thought he was dying. She let him curl into a ball with the blankets and sheets next to her. As she laid, back facing him, she looked at the city until her eyes shut. I am so happy. I'm honestly really proud of how this first one turned out. I was a little worried, but I'm super excited that this is the first upload on the MadZ Brovo channel and in this series, and I hope I can share many more with all of you. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next week. Bye. That was honestly a really weak bye. I'm so sorry. I'll give you a real one. Bye, y'all. No, that was worse. Just goodbye. See you next week.